everyone. For good ideas and true innovation, we need human interaction and healthy competitions. Hence, there exists this platform of debate. Debate is a means of making and evaluating arguments that allows debaters to understand better the opinion of others as well as their own. It plays an essential role in character building. The debaters are thus brought closer together even when they represent opposite sides of an issue or come from vastly different cultures. In doing so, the debate fosters the essential democratic values of freedom of expression. Odyssey 2019 celebrated the life of great William Shakespeare. Odyssey 2021 will allow you to experience the life and literature of Victorians and realize its importance. Odyssey 2021 is the one of a kind. It is the first online Odyssey International happening ever in history of City Montessori School. And we start this magnificent event with a skillful debate. I welcome you all to the La Deliberation. We have with us Ms. Manju Nautiyal, straight from Dehradun, Uttarakhand, as the moderator for this grand event. Ma'am has operated in the field of early childhood education for almost a decade in North America and has been principal at City Montessori School, Joplin Road, for around 15 years. Ma'am is known for her diverse skills, such as for her oratory skills with proficiency in English, Hindi, and also French. She is currently working as personal development planner for medical, nursing, management, and engineering colleges. We welcome you, ma'am, to the 9th Odyssey International for the event La Deliberation. Also, I would like to introduce and welcome our honorable jury members. We first have with us Mrs. Dipali Ma. She is head MET University in the MET Care Outreach, Lucknow. She has done her BA honors in history from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and also her postgraduate in advanced and personal relationship. Mrs. Dipali Ma will be accompanied by Dr. Sugandha Srivastava, our second judge for the day. She is the assistant professor from Department of English at National PG College, Lucknow. She is gold medalist in MA and has done her PhD in children's literature. She has an experience of teaching for 10 years. I would also like to welcome respected Jayashree Krishnan ma'am, Principal, Rajendra Nagar Campus. We have with us Ms. Soumya, who would be assisting us in timekeeping. We are having brilliant students who will compete and share their views on this platform. All the best to all the participants. Over to you, Manjuma.
Thank you, Rakshita. I hope you can all hear me. And let us begin with my felicitations to the August gathering here. I welcome you all to the 9th Odyssey International from the Devbhoomi itself, from Uttaranchal, Dehradun. A very, very warm welcome to each and every one. You know, at the outset of every endeavor, it is incumbent to look to the end of it. So City Montessori School hosts a lot of international, the most popular being the Odyssey. And why does it do so? Let me just tell you. It does that because it wants to focus on the holistic development of every student and to foster the spirit of unity, peace, love, brotherhood, collaboration, cooperation. And that is why we've all gathered here today. And the theme, Odyssey celebrates the beauty of English language, because language, after all, reflects human nature. This year's theme, Vivid Visions of Victorian Vigilante. Now that too has been thought of with a great, there's a lot of thought put into it. Yesterday, we saw the World Parliament. People who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So this year, when we celebrate English literature, what great literature transforms us. The reader, from the one who wrote it to the reader, it brings in us, it inculcates in us values and also creativity. So yesterday, there's a theme that runs through this ninth Odyssey International, which celebrates the beauty of English language. And that is, yesterday, the World Parliament was on Victorian era. And today's debate, the theme is also related to that. As I said, if we do not learn from history, we're going to repeat it. And also, the attitude of gratitude is the best attitude. Yesterday in the World Parliament, the past, the Victorian era, was connected to the present. The speakers talked about the great discoveries that took place, vaccination happened in Victorian era. Lo and behold, today, vaccination is a must for all. The discovery of wireless happened in the Victorian era. Today, now we have AT&T. So you see, we built on the past, we learned from the lessons from the past, and exactly with that attitude to celebrate the past, to learn from it, to build on it together, create a beautiful future. We have today's topic, modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. So you see the common thread that is running in this beautifully compiled thought of festival, the Victorian era, how it relates to the present era, and that being the topic today. Let me just go through the rules once. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. The rules are each speaker will be given 3 minutes. After the first 2 minutes, the warning bell will go. And after 3 minutes, the final buzzer will be rung. Judges kindly note that whatever is spoken after the final buzzer will not be marked for evaluation. After the 3 minutes that is given to each speaker, we will allow 1 minute for interjection, for deliberation. And Ma'am Rakshita will ensure that a fair presentation is given to each of you, wherein you will be allowed to ask the question after the speaker has done speaking his or her part. Now, I must share with you, day before, I had the good fortune of, interacting with all these ignited minds, the ones who are selected. Odyssey, as you well know, sees the participation of international and best of national schools. And today, we had in the last couple of days, we had a preliminary round where the teams were selected and the top 12 speakers were chosen to speak today. So we have the creme de la creme today with us. And how would I like to address them? In the words of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, ignited minds are the most powerful resource on the earth, above the earth, below the earth. To the 12 most ignited minds, I personally had the pleasure of interacting 2 days ago for almost 90 minutes. I welcome each of you. I know you all are very confident speakers. You know your content, you're thorough, you're capable. So bonne chance, good luck to you, and do your best today. The whole idea is, learning goes on lifelong. Joyful learning is something which will stay with you. I'll just quickly go through the criteria for evaluation. 20 is for the content, 5 is for reputation, 10 is for delivery, 5 is for your style of presentation, and 10 is for diction. And it is my proud privilege to welcome the 2 esteemed judges that have joined us, Mrs. Dipali Mark and Dr. Sugandha Srivastav, are judges who will be marking us on these criteria, 50 marks in totality. Good chance, I cannot wait to hear each of you with your fiery speeches. So let's begin. Shall we begin? Okay, remember, enthusiasm, we begin everything enthusiastically. Okay. I will be announcing the team code. We will begin with code 01. Are you there? You will be speaking against the motion, which is modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. Over to you.
Right. Am I audible? Yes, Ishan, you're audible.
And please give
And
me a cue as
your
to when my time starts.
time starts now.
All right. So let me begin today's proceedings with a confession. I am no longer as avid a reader as I was 7, 8 years ago. So by the time I was 11 or 12, I was way past the Harry Potters and the Roald Dahls. And then one day, the owner of the library came to me and handed me a copy of an unabridged version of Oliver Twist and said, "Go on, challenge yourself." And challenge myself I did. And I fell in love with the book. Never in my life prior to that had I read something so intricate yet so simple, so lifelike and harsh, and yet so beautiful. So, and after a couple months of light reading or so, I picked up The Diary of a Young Girl by, of course, Anne Frank. Now, as a 12-year-old who faltered at interpreting history at that point in time, I had prepared myself to be challenged by pretty much the same nuances. That is, the sentimentality, the melodrama, the sheer shapelessness of Dickens's narrative. I could not be further away from the truth. Here was Dickens romanticizing Oliver's misery while taking a dig at the havoc in industrial England. And then there was Anne Frank, who was being scavenged to death for no fault of her own amidst the greatest apocalypse known to mankind. You see where I'm going with this? The 20th century altered the course of history in every way, shape, and form for the very worse. The problem I have here is not with the importance or the grandeur of the Victorian era. The problem here is with the motion at hand. Modern literature is not a reflection of Victorian literature because the 20th century was not a reflection of the 19th century. If anything, there couldn't possibly be more stark differences in the times. Right here, allow me to reinforce the fact that Victorian literature is arguably the richest period of English literature. Tennyson, Doyle, Browning, the list is virtually endless. In comparison, modern fiction spoke of the inner self and consciousness. Modernism reconstructed new values and ideas and turned a blind eye towards the past. Now imagine how uninformed and underread I will sound if I say to you that the basis of Eliot's 4 quartets lies somewhere in Tennyson's ballads. Case in point, the Lord of the Flies by William Golding is probably my favorite book of all time. And anyone who's read the book cannot state that the book could have been written 100 years earlier. The sheer meatiness of the writing comes from the essence of the time it was set in. See, none of us can comment in the future, but I believe all of us have read enough history to conclude that the 20th century was an unprecedented time. And if modern literature reverberates anything at all, it is only and only that particular time period. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, good one. Any questions? Yes, we will let code 12. Please go ahead.
Judges, please note that the speaker took 3 minutes 10.
Okay, that was an excellent speech, sir. My question is that, sir, the theme of Anne Frank's book was not just struggle during the Nazi regime. The basic theme was of struggle, of human struggle, right? So understand that before the Victorian era, books that were written were primarily focused on the problems faced by the nobility and the upper echelons of society. During the Victorian era, after the Industrial Revolution happened, that was the time when authors for the first time in history started to focus on struggles of the middle class and struggles of people other than the nobility. So, sir, then how can you say that the theme of struggle, which was originated during the Victorian era, so then how can you say that Anne Frank's book does not reverberate the theme of struggle that was originated during the Victorian era? So I hope you understand my question.
Now, how much time do I have to answer this? Because I think it...
We'll give you 30 seconds. But next, I'll just go ahead, answer it, and then we will...
1 minute. You can take 1 minute.
All right. So, sir, struggle can be defined in a multitude of ways. You know, the point I was trying to make was that Anne Frank's struggle and the struggle of the middle class was a completely different ballgame altogether. The middle class was struggling for food, they were battling poverty. Dickens personified that very beautifully. The authors of the Victorian era personified that extremely beautifully. But what happened was, due to the physiographical and historical changes in the 20th century, that struggle elevated to the struggle for life itself. World wars changed the world. The outlook of people altered altogether. And that is why the comparison of struggle is like chalk and cheese. Right? I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. You're allowed only one question. My request to all the participants and speakers is, please, the deliberation should be in 1 minute. That automatically means that you need to phrase your question to the point. Please do not take a lot of your time in framing the question. So keep it, take note, keep the question while the speaker is speaking, get your question ready to the point. Thank you so much. That was a really good speech. And thank you, Code 12, for the refutation, and Code 21. Thank you, very well spoken. Code 1, very well spoken. With that, we move to our second speaker for the day, Code 06. And Code 06 will be speaking for the motion. Code 06, you are invited.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. I hope my voice is quite usable.
You are absolutely clear. Go ahead.
You are audible.
Thank you so much.
Your time starts now.
Okay. So I would request everyone to please clear to this point. So the motion at hand is, this House believes that the modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. The side proposition is here to tell you that the side opposition has failed to extravasate their encumber and discredit their stance. The burden that lies at side proposition is to prove that modern literature, yes, remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. Before I begin with my detailed constructors, I would like to talk about the modern literature in general. The period from 1901 to 1939 is often referred as the modernist period. But if you talk about it in respect to the Victorian period, it ended up with the death of Queen Victoria and a change in the political stability that rule had guaranteed. Modernism responds to rapid transformations in Western society, urbanization, and growth of industry after the World War I, which was directly influenced by the Victorian literature. So basically, my point here is that Victorian era by the end brought an avant-garde movement in literature and art that sought to break away from ordinary social values. Commercialization took place, and the general literary tradition that preceded it. Thinkers like Ernest Mach and Sigmund Freud influenced this moment. So without any delay, just let me lay down the basic outline for my speech. I'll be putting forward my arguments in a three-pronged manner. So I'll start with my constructive number one. So modern literature as Victorian literature. The persistent popular embrace of Victorian literature has had a profound influence on modern literature and media. Writers such as Charles Dickens and Bronte's sisters still sell robustly on the most booksellers list today and are frequently adapted into films and television products, both directly and in modernized retellings. In addition, many modern novels such as A Great and A Terrible Beauty demonstrate that the intricate culture mores of the Victorian era and are a home in the modern culture site. So I hope my constructive number would be clear to everyone. Moving on to my constructive two, Victorian literature was totally indifferent from modern literature. Much of the work of the time is seen as a bridge between the Romantic era and the modernist era. If one studies possibly all the great writers of Victorian period, you will mark three general characteristics that are still followed in the modern literature. First, literature in the Victorian age tended to come face to face with realism. That is, the period of realism came like it was the beginning of the realism phase. It also stated that there was a deviation from the strict principle for art's sake and assembling its more moral purpose. And talking about the last point that I had is promotion of science and shift from moral values was strongly felt. It was indoctrinated to come to more real and issues that were really in the market. So to my last constructive, Renaissance and the literature in comparison to development, the clear concept behind this constructive is to fact that the relevance of Renaissance literature. With the Renaissance, the literature era changed from hypothetical approaches to more realistic outlook. It marked the beginning of realism. Science, moral, ethic, races, discriminations with new topics in the room that I guess many of you would agree that they are still followed in modern literature. This stated around the genesis of World War I, and literature saw a rise in scientific approach and beliefs, and it was followed in the modern era as well. And the results are in front of you. You are sitting here with me talking on a virtual platform. So I do think that the scientific or whatever development happened, it was happened because of Victorian era that is still indoctrinated in modern era. So to my conclusions, thank you, Honorable Chair, that to give this side opposition a chance. And I clearly feel that the side opposition has given three crisp, livid, and substantive to give discharge their burden. And I clearly feel that modern literature remarkably reverberates the modern literature, Victorian literature. And I feel that side proposition has failed. The side opposition has failed to discredit their stance, and it made no sense with their flimsy argument. And the debate clearly leans towards the side opposition. Thank you so much. Proud to propose.
Could we know how much time was
Just
taken?
please note that the participant took 3 minutes 55 seconds.
Almost 4 minutes. May I request the timekeeper to ring the bell? Are we ringing the bell at 2 minutes and the final bell at 3 minutes? Minute, because it's the stipulated time given to them is 3 minutes. So we did.
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay.
We
okay.
are.
At my end, I could not hear it. Okay, so please, speakers, really do note that you have 3 minutes to speak, and after 3 minutes, what you say, it will not be counted towards your, evaluation. So stick to 3 minutes time limit, please. And
Ma'am, can we just test the buzzer? If this issues there that
Yes, ma'am,
go
please,
ahead.
because I
the
couldn't hear the
participants
bell.
aren't able to hear. So
okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please take the lead on that.
was it audible?
Extremely. Yes, we could hear it. But the rest of us
Okay,
hear it.
thank you.
Okay. Okay. Very well spoken, code 06. Any questions, introductions by the rest of you? Remember, 5 marks for refutation. Okay. We have code 10. Is that code 10 raising the? Yes, go ahead, code 10.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. Excellent speech, sir. My question for you is, how do you justify the contradiction in your statements that all the changes led to a different form of literature that originated after the Victorian era, and at the same time you reduce it to just a repetition and a reverberation of the Victorian era, where you yourself mentioned tons of changes which were prevalent after the Victorian era in the modern literature?
Okay, so my basic theory here was to state the fact that Victorian literature, at the time of its brain, it brought about many changes to the modern literature. So my basic theory here comes is Karl Marx. I hope you know him. Karl Marx theories totally pointed towards socialism and communism in today's era. So if you clearly think the writings of the last time of Victorian era clearly preceded to the modern era. So I clearly believe that yes, there is a contribution that Victorian era did to the modern literature, and in today's current situation, I do feel that modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any time left? We're done with 1 minute. Okay. We thank you for that. We move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker, code 02. Are you there? Code 02. Code 02, are you there?
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
raise your- Okay. So you will be speaking against the motion. Please go ahead.
Greetings to all assembled. Today's topic is modern literature remarkably reverberates Victorian literature. I believe that this statement is false. Virginia Woolf famously commented in or about December 1910, human character changed. Many scholars would argue that something did change, if not human character itself, with the advent of modernism. A widely accepted term used to describe the inclinations, the variety of inclinations, the rapid changes in cultural sensibilities and aesthetics from 1900s to 1940s in European and Anglo-American literature. Whereas Victorian literature was just the body of works produced during the reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901. The era ended with the death of the Queen and a massive change in the political stability her rule had offered. Now it was modernism that stepped up to respond to changes taking place during that time. Urbanization, industrialization, suffragette movement, rise of feminism, World War I. It was an avant-garde movement that endeavored to break away from everyday social values, extensive commercialism, and the highly conservative and genteel literary traditions in the preceding era, greatly influenced by disciplines such as psychology, sociology, philosophy. It was about breaking away from Victorian morality and establishment of individualism. Victorian era was all about idealism, objective form of narration. They had a strict set of morals. But when it comes to Victorian era, we have a more subjective form of narration. Sorry, when we are coming to modernist era, we have a more subjective form of narrations. We've got moral relativism and a very pessimistic picture of a culture in disarray. I believe that throughout history, people have had their own sense of what is good and what is evil. And this sense remained surprisingly intact till World War One. But as people saw the world they had lived in change around them, they became aimless, fraught with alienation, confusion, isolation. They stopped believing in what they were fighting for, which is clearly evident in the literature they wrote. Victorians were about domesticity, identity, culture, imperialism, industrialization. And then we turn towards modernist literature and we see loss, despair, political ruin. Example, T.S. Eliot's poem Wasteland. It captures the destitution of the world, a culture in disarray, and the shattering of people's conscience in the wake of the war. Victorian novels, they had a clear plot, well-defined traits, but when it comes to modern novels, modernist novels, they have a broken and fractured plot, a serious lack of chronology, as well as rich in internal monologue and interdiscourse. James Joyce's and Virginia Woolf's writing being a prime example of stream of consciousness of during that time. Modernism and modernist literature is about fresh, bold, new approaches, a break away from Victorian traditions. They reject imitations and are far from a reverberation of their past. Ezra Pound did say, didn't he? Make it new. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, weekend is half done. We're just getting heated, really into the spirit of the debate. May I know how much time was taken?
Yeah, ma'am, participant took 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay, I hope the judge, because I do not get to hear the bell. So I hope the judges.
I couldn't hear either the 2-minute buzzer or the 3-minute buzzer.
So if we could just take a note of that, because once we are with the flow of it, one does not keep a track of time. So for the judges to, and so if we could just ensure, ma'am, Soumya, if you could just see that, if you could ring, because the buzzer was loud enough. If you could just ring it one time, just to see.
We are just checking, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Soumya, ma'am, if you could just ring it once.
Okay, so we should be able to hear it at 2 minutes because the brochure clearly states it should ring at 2 minutes and then at 3 minutes. So this time, if we could, when our next speaker speaks, if we could ensure that we ring it at 2 minutes and
it
then
was rung actually, ma'am.
Okay, because I think some of us could not. If the rest of them can hear, I'm very okay with it. All right, we are open for your deliberations now. Come on. Code 12 and code 10. You've already had a chance to speak. I would, in the spirit of cooperation, I would like some and collaboration. Let's give somebody else a chance to ask a question. Who raises? Who will raise a hand? We have code 23. Would you like to ask a question? Code 23.
Yes, I would like to ask a question.
Please do. And
very well spoken, but you said the victories were more about morals. I would like you to answer me that Robert Browning wrote Porphyria's Lover, where he showed that the lover of Porphyria strangled her. So how could you justify Robert Browning's? He did not do anything moral in that poem.
It's about the type of moral displayed in both periods. Victorian morals were set. They were set in stone. But when we talk about modernism, they followed relativism, moral relativism, which is not every moral can never be right in all situations. But Victorian society was guided by strict morals that were directed directly from the Queen. And there was a separate genre during Victorian era called sensationalism that was extremely popular, but it did not reflect the society. And we are talking about modernist literature. They had moral relativism, which talked about the culture they saw that was in disarray. It wasn't about what is shown as moral in literature and what isn't. It's about what readers interpreted during that time. Due to Victorian morality, there were several books banned that were considered less than moral.
At that time itself,
only one question allowed, please. Could we ring the bell? Could we please ring the bell because I think it's more than a minute. I could not hear the bell. Could we ring the bell, please? I cannot still hear the bell. Ma'am, Soumya, can
Excuse me,
you?
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, only one.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, on a point of information, ma'am, will the speaker get any advantage in to the fact that the bell couldn't be heard by most of the people here?
I'm not sure whether at that end, because some of us could hear and some of us could not, but I think I will leave it to the discretion of our esteemed judges. Thank you for making that point. We have to be very clear about, or if Rakshita ma'am or could just raise the hand if 1 minute is over, so that I can, at least with the deliberations, or because I'm not, Swami, I'm not able to hear the, I believe some of us are not able to hear the bell. So if you could just raise, we have to figure out something to ensure a hand would do. The time is up. I'll announce it. Okay.
Actually, after 2 minutes, we don't want our participant to get disturbed.
Okay, so could you kindly ring it at 3 minutes?
Yeah, finally we'll do that, ma'am. We'll do it after 2 minutes also.
Okay.
And I would also like the judges to make a note that team code 03 is not participating, ma'am. Team code 03, that is the next participant,
will not be there.
Is not there. So we move to 05.
Okay. Okay. So what we are going to now ring the bell at 2 minutes and then at 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Is that my understanding? Is it? Am I clear on that?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be doing that. We'll be doing that, ma'am.
Oh, okay. All right. So we move on to our next speaker. We have code 5, and code 5 will be speaking against the motions.
Ma'am, am I audible?
You are very audible, dear, and all the very best to you. Bon chance. Yes, you.
Thank you.
Okay, your time starts now.
The words decay, the words decay and fall. The vapors weep their burden. Man comes and stills the field, and after many
I think, ma'am, there's some
no,
network.
of the two poems
We couldn't hear. So should I ask her to start again?
Yes, please do. Please do, because code 5 is having some technical error.
So team code 05.
Ma'am, am I audible and visible?
Yes, now you are very much audible.
Do not worry, relax. We will give you enough time. We will start the timer again. Please go ahead.
Are you ready, child?
Ma'am, I am visible and audible, right?
Team code 05.
Ma'am, I am audible and I am visible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, then I'll begin.
There's a lot of echo.
You, team code 05, please mute your other device because there's an echo.
I'm sorry, am I audible?
Are you ready? Should we start?
Yes, ma'am, we can start.
Okay, your time starts now.
The woods decay and fall, the vapors weep their burden to the ground. Man comes and stills the field and lies beneath, after many a summer dies the swan. Or have you seen the wind in real? Neither have I, nor have you. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing through. My honorable audience, of the two poems I just recited, which do you think has more gravity? Greetings to one and all present here. Today, I, school code OD2105, am here to speak against the motion. The Victorian poetry is the exact opposite of the unconventionalism and modernism in the modern poetry. It's a fact that Victorian Romanticism showcased a deepened appreciation of the beauties of nature. A general exhalation of emotions over reasons and of the senses over intellect. It was indeed a heightened examination of human personality, besides representing the social class and the economy. The literary product of the Victorian era was mostly based on ideas of science, religion, and politics. While the modern poetry is usually a breakdown and based on old faith, convictions, and idealism, which is a humongous shift from objective to subjective narration and a revolt against romantic tradition. Does the modern age not appear quite skeptical of the old certainties and values governing Victorian life? The modern literature era is mostly based on themes of loss, despair, political, and destitution. Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot, is a perfect example of the same. Well, do you see any sort of reflection of Indian religion, deeds, morality, culture, and bravery in the Victorian era text? To be very honest, I don't. My worthy audience, can you still say that modern literature reverberates Victorian literature? Well, I leave it upon you to ponder, and with this, I rest my case here. Thank you.
Thank you, Code 5. Could we know how much time was taken by Code 5?
How much time? 3 minutes. The speaker took 3 minutes, 5 seconds.
Did we ring the bell? 3 minutes?
We did, ma'am.
Okay, for those, okay, all right. Okay, let's raise your hands, speakers, those who want to refute. Okay, we have, let's see, Code 6. Code 6, please, go ahead. Please ask your question.
So that was indeed a very beautiful speech given by Code 05. So my basic concept here is that you very provokingly said that yes, the modern literature does not like the Victorian literature does not reverberate in that of modern literature. But don't you think there is a direct indication of how creativity blossomed during this period so much that the advancements of literature in every field was possible, and it was propagated beyond Britain, and also beyond the timeline that was of Victorian era.
Okay, give her a chance to answer it. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for asking me this question. And moving on to your answer, I would like to state that the Victorian era was usually based on nature and self-senses and related to hard deeds. But when you talk of the modern era, it is usually based on reasoning, logic, and science. How can we even compare the two of them? I just stated one of my, poems, which is Waiting for Godot, which perfectly represents industrializations, human character, and everything, which is definitely logical reasoning. So I hope I satisfy your answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Appeal to follow on.
No, we are not allowed to counter question because it has to stay within 1 minute limit. We move on to our next speaker, Code 08. Are you there? If you could just raise your hands. I'm sorry, there's some echo also for some of you. Code 08.
Ma'am, 08 also is facing some technical glitch.
Okay.
So the participant has not joined.
Okay. So what I would like our esteemed judges to note that we will give a chance to Code 8 when we come on our last speaker, and hopefully by then the technical error at that end would be sorted. So I move on to, we will leave Code 8 for now. We will move on to our next speaker, Our next speaker is Code 10. Are you there, Code 10? Raise your hand if you're there.
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are there. All right. Okay. And Code 10, I believe, will be speaking against the motion. So go ahead, Code 10. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Should I start?
Your time starts now.
Thank you. A very good afternoon, everyone. And after listening to the various points of view put forth by the proposition, I've come to a conclusion that even when the points made by my fellow finalists were absolutely brilliant, and I congratulate each and every one of you for that, we are still missing out on a rather enormous aspect as to why modern literature does not reverberate Victorian literature. Before analyzing any point of view, ladies and gentlemen, we have to realize the fact that the Victorian age in literature ended 120 years ago. And in that time, as mentioned by speakers before as well, the world has witnessed more changes than ever before in the entire human history. For instance, not one, but two world wars, countless nations fighting for independence, including our very own India, and constant innovations and revolutions happening. Now, these events might sound political in nature and very social in nature, and one might even wonder, what does literature has to do with any of it, right? But I think all the literary enthusiasts sitting in this room today would admit that literature is not just reading and writing. It's more than that. It's the part of our lives which goes on to live forever. Therefore, we cannot afford to be this delusional to think that these changes were not inspired by modernism in literature. Now, during the Victorian times, people had to adhere to and accept the laws, and basically anything which the church preached had to be the charter of your actions. Now, if you're wondering how is this possible in an empire where the sun never sets, let me make it clear for you. It was faith and blind faith in the unquestionable authorities of religion, which indoctrinated in the minds of people and to an extent was supported and left unquestioned by the literature. The bitter truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that so much focus was there on society that even when it was the individual's story that was being told, it had more to do with the individual's role in the society than it had to do with the individual itself. If we talk about Victorian works like Can You Forgive Her, North and South, Portrait of a Lady, the one thing common in all of them is that all of them revolve around social landscapes and social roles. Fortunately, this lack of individualism ended as the modern literature flourished. Ladies and gentlemen, it's authors of modern literature like George Bernard Shaw and Joseph Conrad who laid stress on freedom of expression, experimentation, and radicalism. It is them, ladies and gentlemen, who have fought against the society, and it is them who have discarded conventional expectations to push the boundaries of literatures to the very best. Now, at this point of time, I would like to extend a question to each and every one of you present. Is it fair that in this literary event, we as participants or even as participants in this entire extended event reduce the entire modern literature as just a repetition of its predecessors? It's absolutely not. We need to respect the contributions of those who have laid the foundations of today's inclusive and liberated literature. And that starts by acknowledging the very fact that modern literature is more than just a reverberation of the Victorian literature. Thank you so much.
Good, good, good. You kept within the time. Well spoken, dear. Well spoken. So let's
I just want to ask, was the buzzer audible?
Yes, this time it was audible.
It was audible.
This
plus
time
it
it was
your
audible.
message. The time is
Yes.
up.
Was it audible? If
Yes, it was. Thank you. It was.
okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Let's see. It's
Ma'am, the participant took 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
okay. Now we open it for deliberations, interjections. And I see two people raising their hands, two participants, and one is code 23 and the other is code 12. Code 12, you had a chance once. Did code 23, did you get a chance before?
Yes, ma'am, I have got chance.
And code 12 also got a chance before?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Anybody else in the fair spirit? Okay, did code 6, you also had a chance before? Good. Anyone other than that? Remember, we only start counting when I stop speaking, so it's okay. Anyone else wants to take a chance?
The thing is that the last three speakers were against the motion. That is why half the people are not able to question.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Thank you, Code 1, for reminding me that. Okay. We will let the question, the introduction go to Code 23. Sneha, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Very well spoke, speaker. But you said that people were blindly following the faith and the church. But I would like you to remind that the Charles Darwin proposed the origin of species in the Victorian era, and Matthew Arnold also wrote Cultural and Anarchy, where he questioned and compromised between faith and science. So, how would you justify that? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for your question. And I would just simply answer it by saying that we cannot define an era simply by its, like you can say, exceptions, right? And even though the Darwin theory of evolution was there, it was highly criticized and contradicted by a lot of literature that was produced at that time. Second of all, if I to like give an example to that, if I write an essay with a vocabulary of 16,000 words, I won't be transported to Shakespeare time, wouldn't I? It will still be modern literature. So I think exceptions are always there, and we cannot define something by simply by its exceptions. And even though science was blooming, it was the modern literature which mainstreamed it to the common public.
Thank you. Thank you, Koten. Thank you, Koten. Well, okay. Now we thank you. Now we move on to our next speaker. And meanwhile, I'm hoping our other speakers are able to join us. We have Code 12. Code 12, are you here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Code 12 is here, and Code 12 will be speaking for the motion. So let's hear you. Modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. Let's hear you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to understand how modern literature remarkably reverberates Victorian literature, or how it closely parallels or contains similar ideas to the literature during the Victorian era, right off the bat, understand that the Victorian era is responsible for outright originating some of the most prominent themes which are present in modern literature. Before the Victorian era, literature was considered to be solely a medium of education, reserved almost exclusively for the nobility and the upper echelons of society, partly because the middle class workers simply could not afford to spend time on such leisure activities. But during the Victorian era, the middle class workers, due to the Industrial Revolution, now had stable incomes and subsequently were able to devote time to activities such as reading and writing. This meant that a majority of the consumers now hail from the middle working class, and now they were able to devote time to leisure activities which included reading and writing. So for the first time in history, authors now actively centered their books around people and around issues that the middle class people faced. Popular pre-Victorian era authors such as William Shakespeare and Jane Austen all hailed from the upper class, and so their work naturally pandered to the same. But some of the most famous works of the Victorian era, such as David Copperfield and Oliver Twist, are centered around themes of the middle class. And the most famous authors of the time, such as Charles Dickens and Charlotte Bronte themselves, hailed from such families themselves. So understand that just like the Industrial Revolution is a primary reason why the middle class people have any power in society today, this shift in the focus of literature is a primary reason why a significant part of modern literature focuses on issues faced by people irrespective of their social standing. Without this literary paradigm shift during this era, we would simply not be able to experience the sheer extent of work highlighting the injustices and experiences endured by people from different sections of society. Furthermore, it was during this era that female writers had started to flourish. Authors like Emily Bronte, George Eliot, and Charlotte Bronte became popular during this period. And through their books, authors were finally able to educate people about the problems faced by women in an all-out patriarchal society. It was their works, such as Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, which act as a fundamental framework for modern authors to focus on actually relevant social issues. This era is responsible for individuality and free thought to become the focus of literature. Authors frequently use themes related to social sciences and scientific research in their works. Charles Darwin published his Scientifically Defining on the Origin of Species, and authors like Charles Dickens, George Eliot, and Thomas Hardy focused their works on realism rather than romanticism. The authors of this period were the ones responsible for that transition from the overpowering romantic literature during the Romantic Age to modern literature that was focused on genres other than romance. Understand that Victorian literature is the primary base for the wide range of themes that exist in modern literature. And it is the reason why books by the likes of Roald Dahl, John Grisham, Tolkien, and books about revolution, society, and even fantasy and fiction exist in the first place. And that is why I can confidently conclude that modern literature does remarkably reverberate Victorian literature. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Code 12. Thank you. I just love the passion in your speeches. That is the spirit behind this festival. So let's open to our questions. Are
The participant took 3 minutes, 37 seconds.
Now,
Judges, please note, 3 minutes and 37 seconds.
Okay. Open for deliberations and interjections, and may I request all of you, please take a chance. Five max for this, Okay, we have code 25, who has not yet code 25. I'll give you, I'll let you ask the question. Go ahead, code 25. Please ask.
Thank you for the recognition, ma'am. The speaker talked about Shakespeare and about women's role in society, about women's empowerment. Given that Shakespeare also he's one of the most prominent older writers to address women's position in society, is it correct for the speaker to completely discredit all the writers that came before them and give the credit for women's empowerment in literature entirely to the Victorian era? Isn't the theme too universal to be considered that of just Victorian era?
Let him answer. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that question. That was actually an excellent question. No, I'm not discrediting the authors of the previous eras, but right now, today we are talking about Victorian era literature. So the thing is that authors before this time did talk about these issues. But during the Victorian era, due to the conditions of that era, these authors were actually able to were actually popularized. The works of these authors were actually popularized due to the changes in society in this era. And that is what we are discussing today, how modern literature remarkably reverberates Victorian literature. Victorian era authors also took inspiration from authors before their time for their work. A lot of them actually did write about that as well. So you need to understand that I am not discrediting the authors, but I am saying that the Victorian era is responsible for why the works of the authors even before the Victorian era are popularized today. I hope you understand.
You made your point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. With that, we move on to our next speaker, code 25. Are we there? Yes. Oh, yes, you're just asked a question. So we have code 25 who will be speaking against the motion. The floor is all yours.
Okay, your time starts now.
As Charles Dickens said in Great Expectations, we changed again and yet again, and now it was too late and too far to go back, and I went on, and the world lay at my feet. Literature is the soul of civilization, and so it changes and progresses with the times. It is unnatural for the works of our time to resonate with the themes and ideas of an era so far removed from ours. Therefore, I, the participant from OD 21, Team 25, am here with the stance that modern literature does not resonate with that of the Victorians. The Victorians had the novel as a medium, and while it is still widely used, modern audiences have moved to prefer a wider range. Flash fiction, slam poetry, memoirs, and autobiographies are all contemporary inventions. While the modern era does continue the traditions of the Victorians, more often than not, it creates its own path. Next, I request you to think of Victorian writers. Who comes to mind? Mostly white, middle-class men and women. Compared with the selective writers of the Victorian era, the modern times have a variety of people writing about a variety of experiences. Afghan Khalid Hosseini wrote about his experiences as his country fell apart, and Japanese Haruki Murakami writes about the collective trauma of the Second World War. With the variety of writers, the themes of modern literature have strayed far beyond the limited ones of the Victorians. Modern literature has also moved beyond the decidedly grounded reality of the Victorian novel. Instead of the banalities of whom to marry and the changes due to new factories, abstract ideas have found a home in literature. Writers like André Breton gravitated towards surrealism to make sense of a war-torn world, and authors like Franz Kafka used absurdism to explore the harsh realities of their characters' lives. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, while the Victorian era championed imperialism, modern literature seeks to undo the trauma and injustice it caused. While the Victorians wrote to uphold colonialism, post-colonial writers dismantled the very assumptions that justified it. Writers like Salman Rushdie and Chinua Achebe created a battlefield on paper, defying the intergenerational subjugation that rendered their countries drained and exploited. They reflect millions of downtrodden voices compared with the Victorian dogma of God's designated European rulers. To quote Shakespeare, what is past is prologue. In order to create a new identity, it is necessary for one to leave behind the past, the prologue, and flesh out new characters, stories, and messages. It is redundant to echo the words
Yes,
of our past, and post-Victorian literature
I
has
muted myself, then I
distinct
pressed.
identity.
What happened? Please continue. 3 minutes are not up yet, or are they up? What happened, Vanali? Code 25?
Soumya ma'am was saying something. I thought she's saying my time is up. Then you were saying something.
Oh, nothing. I'm so sorry. Soumya, were you saying something?
No, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. It is redundant to echo the words of our past, and post-Victorian literature has a decidedly distinct identity. Modern literature has embraced a changing time and left behind a blazing trail for future generations to look up to. Thank you.
Oh, you were just thank you, Nali. We're just ending it. In future, if there is any, because this is, we do have some technical glitches here and there.
Yes,
Do
ma'am, I
continue with your
completely
speech.
understand.
Do continue with your speech. Continue
No, I
with
am
it.
done with it.
Yes, I know you're done with it. Yeah, I was very happy because you just had 2 lines left.
Do you want to start again?
No, she was already close to context by then. We
Is
were
it fine with you, or you want to start again?
No, ma'am, I think I have made my point here. All the speakers could hear me.
Yes, only the last 2 lines, and you were close to context by then. So it's perfectly all right.
Okay, fine.
So, and just for future, for the rest 3 speakers that we have left now, please carry on. It's perfectly all right. Even if you go more than the 3 minutes, do not let it break your thought. Now, yes, the interesting part now. So, refutations, if any.
And she took 3 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay, perfectly all right. Let's see. We have code 12 asking us, and there's code 6 asking. Anyone else from here want to ask a question who didn't get a chance before? Okay, let's see. Code 12, did I give you a chance before? Code 12 and code 6 have already asked. But this time I will let code 6 ask the question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the recognition, ma'am. That was a great speech indeed, but I'll be very precise with my question. Talking about free speech in today's era, you see that the upliftment of women by the period was increasing, and it's still increasing. And there is a consensus that clearly states that the upliftment of women was clearly seen by the end of Victorian era, not stating that by the end of the Victorian era. It is said here that 25 years before the end of Victorian era, there was a shift from people believing into more female writers, and there was a rise in the literary rates among women. So how do you think that it clearly does not follow this point that...
Thank you so much for your question. I request you to examine this more closely. What is the debate about women today? The modern writer takes for granted that a woman already has her basic rights. She already has financial independence. And even if they portray women as meek creatures, they clearly condemn it, do not endorse it. In contrast to the Victorian debate, which was, should women be allowed to vote? Should women be allowed to dress as they please? These are ideas which the modern times take for granted. So the treatment of women in literature has completely shifted from the Victorian era to the modern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, if I could ask a question, please.
Please go ahead.
Is it 3 minutes, 15 seconds counting the unnecessary pause I took, or is it 3 minutes, 15 seconds?
No, we have already minus that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Deducted that. That's why it took some time to calculate that.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Since the speaker's answer was not a minute long, can we raise another question to the same speaker?
Did you get a chance earlier?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
We will continue. We will, because it is with the question and the answer together. It should be 1 minute, right?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Because we will exceed the time limit as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, this was code 25 speaking for the motion. I now request code 21. And I so hope you are here. Code 21, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, code 21, you are requested to deliver your views for the motion. Code 21, it's all yours.
Should I start?
Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My code is OD2121, and I'm here to speak for the motion. Progress is impossible without change. Life develops, and change is in motion. But the form of literature has not changed yet. And hence, in my today's attempt, I'll try to sketch the three key similarities which remain just as relevant with the decades on, and them being pragmatism, style of literature, and reflection of societal concerns. Pragmatism, what is it? It's a theory which is characterized by its attention to details and an attempt to recreate reality. A writer quotes what he sees and tries to reflect it in his books. Be it Victorian literature or modern, none of it cheated away from reality. It is evident from Victorian novels like Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, where she describes the character's life, or The Adventures of Huckleberry by Mark Twain, where one can see how it captures the dialect of time. Also, the famous book A Farewell to Arms from the Modern Era, written by famous modernist Ernest Hemingway, tells us about the state of world. All these writers have one thing in common. They just want their work to be a clear reflection of society. Be it Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist or George Eliot's Felix Holt, societal concerns were largely addressed by the writers. The condition of England was a phrase used by Thomas Carlyle in his essay Chartism in 1839. But the most important issue in spotlight in both the eras was the life of women and children, the miserable life of women and children, actually. John Austen's Pride and Prejudice or Kate Chopin's Story of Anna describes it all about how Victorian era's gender roles and stereotypes were. Also, Maya Angelou's And I Still Rise and her other works describe the similar issues from modern era. Use of symbolism and imagery forms the base of English literature. The Victorian poet used imagery and wrote whimsical verses, as in Bad Ballads, and also Lord Alfred Tennyson wrote many poems prominently using imagery and sensory elements. The modernist writers too infused objects and people with symbolic meanings, just like how James Joyce's Ulysses incorporates open-ended symbols and imagery. Modernist writers did nothing but to celebrate Victorian literature. Modernism represents a stark shift from the traditions of Victorian literature, and hence it was a time period which changed, not the literature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Code 21. May I know how much time was taken by Code 21?
The speaker took 3 minutes, 5 seconds.
Thank you. Okay. We have, oh my God, 3 hands raised. We have, I don't think I have given code 5. I have not given you a chance to ask, to interject. Code 5.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Please go
I
ahead.
would like to question the speaker that you stated that literature has not changed. Can you please throw light on this statement? Because it is a definite shift from objective to subjective narration, which is a drastic change indeed. So could you please throw light on this statement?
Just an informal statement I would like to start. If a person goes and gets some surgery to change the face of his, will the person change? No, the identity remains the same. And same thing has happened with literature. The face of literature might have changed with the writers, but the themes and the main objective of literature stays the same, which is evident from the approach, their realistic approach, and then them questioning science and myth in Victorian era and also in modernistic era. And hence I prove my point that yes, the literature stays the same.
Okay, time for one more question. Yes, please. I'll allow this one. This is getting too interesting. Code 10. Go ahead. Quickly ask.
Okay, so my question for you is very simple. You do realize that we can't change the language. English literature will be English literature. We can't change the basic nouns, right? So even when change was so drastic that from a point where gods were believed to be creatures and from like monarchs were supposed to be creatures sent by gods and they had divine powers, to a point where we can question the authorities that rule us. If this change is not drastic,
Let her answer before the time is
yeah,
up. Go ahead,
yeah.
answer.
I'll answer it.
Go ahead, please do.
So that, okay, for a plant to be grown, we need to put the seed inside the ground. And Victorian era was the time when actually the questioning of science and myth started. And hence, like the topic says, it reverberates. What the modern literature does is resound all the objectives and principles which were actually started in the Victorian era.
Thank you. Your time is up. Time is up. Thank you. It was getting too interesting for me to let go. Okay. Thank you. I'm sure all of us are enjoying all your speeches. Fiery, the delivery, the content. It's par excellence. Okay. Now we move on to our second last speaker, Code 38. Who will be speaking against the motion. Code 38, are you here?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Where exactly? Could you just raise your hand so I could see you? Code 38, where are you?
Just a minute.
Code 38, code 38. Okay, we can hear you loud and clear. Code 38.
Am I visible and audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are.
Okay, go ahead.
Literature, a reflex of life and a product of the times, is deeply conditioned by its social milieu. At the dawn of modernism, new ideas, new inventions were rapidly transforming the world in the first decades of the century. And social life in all its various aspects, physical, intellectual, political, economic, and moral, had practically emerged anew. Modernism is a rebellion against ages past, and one of the first examples of modernist writings that began the change from Victorianism to modernism, highlighting the idea of British superiority no more, was Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. He, together with Henry James, are late Victorian writers who found themselves at the crossroads between the late 19th century and the early 20th century. While Victorians in the literature were concerned about the culture in which they already were, modernists focused towards the future. The death of Queen Victoria and her son Edward marked the shift from the Victorian era into the modern world. World wars collapsed civilizations as it had been previously understood in Great Britain. Scars of war were prominently seen on the home front after German air raids of World War II. The large decrease in population of men gave women the opportunity to earn a place in the workforce and to begin to more forcibly question the prescribed gender roles. The modern time was largely influenced by ideas of Freud, Marx, and Einstein. Modernism was a movement in literature, art, and music that began with the thought that everything that was to be written had already been written. Modernist writers believed that in order to create new works, they needed to create a completely new genre using new styles of writing. These writers wanted to differentiate themselves from the past literary movements, especially those of the Victorian era dated roughly from 1837 to 1901. Although modernism was a collective movement, modernists came from all different walks of life, and they all came together on one important issue, to push to form something new. They felt that in the new time of industrialism, old ideas of traditionalism were becoming quickly outdated. Modernists, at least in literature, were the people who wanted to create a new relationship between reader and author. They wanted to create a new form of expression. Various changes took place in the modern period of literature. The imaginative writing verses, structure of verses of the Victorian period became obsolete. Literary works started losing their magic. Victorian writers became rancid and they failed to evoke the spirit of the readers. Art must be renewed in order to revitalize the readers. But Victorian artworks were lacking the freshness in content and surprising elements. The main difference between the Victorian and modernist literature is the shift towards questioning the omniscient narrator. There was a shift from an objective all-knowing to a subjective provisional narrative form. The Victorians used the godlike all-knowing narrator largely without even thinking about it. The Victorian era was more about social class and the economy. On the other hand, the modern literature was more about showing what the world really looked like. Of course, both these eras made an impact on the way people see literature in the literature world, but very definitely modern literature is very different in terms of themes, subjects, purposes, and techniques from those of the Victorian era. Therefore, I'd like to conclude by strongly affirming that modern literature does not remarkably reverberate in literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Code 38. Indeed. Let's see, hands up. Let's see. Okay, we're open for...
Please note that the speaker took 3 minutes, 6 seconds.
Okay, code 21, code 23, we will let you take the question.
Thank you for recognition, ma'am. Speaker well spoken, but you said that modern writers use new style of writing and their style of writing was different from Victorian writers. But one of James Joyce's famous work, Ulysses, is a dramatic monologue, a technique that was invented by a Victorian poet and author, Robert Browning. How would you justify that?
Okay, so see, as one of my fellow debaters said, that literature remains literature. But what I would like to emphasize here is that, of course, there are certain areas and certain things that the other people get inspired from, like different literary eras. People get inspired from it. That doesn't mean they go completely on the basis of it. They make modifications. They make changes. Like, I hope you're answered. They make.
You made your point. You made your point. Do we have time for another question? Could we quickly take one question? Code 12, go ahead. Quickly, very quickly.
Okay. So, ma'am, in your speech, you mentioned the example of Sigmund Freud and how he how he talked about problems humans faced, how he talked about human behavior. So, ma'am, Charles Darwin's work about human evolution was published during the Victorian era. So, ma'am, don't you think that sets a basic theme for human evolution and about how human psychology and human behavior changes with time? So, don't you think that was a basic theme of Sigmund Freud's work?
That was sure a basic theme, but as I said before, people get inspired and they make changes and they bring modifications and bring it to the mainstream so that people are aware of it. Like Sigmund's psychoanalysis and irrational philosophy and all those theories that he presented in the modern to the modern literature era, it was an inspiration, but it doesn't mean that they completely reverberate the entire era on its own.
You made your point. You made your point. Thank you. With that, we move on to our last speaker. I just had a question for the organizers. There was one of the speakers that was expected to join us late. Code 8. Has Code 8 made it? Is Code 8 here with us? Because Code 8 did not get a chance to speak earlier. Was it Code 8? Okay. Rakshita ma'am, just
no, ma'am, still not joined.
Okay, all right. Because with this, we come to our last speaker, last but not the least for the day, Code 23. You are the last speaker today. And Code 23, you will be speaking for the motion. So let's hear you. Modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. What are your views on this Code 23?
Yes.
Please. Is Code 23 the last speaker? Is she audible?
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I'll start.
Your time starts now.
Go ahead, Sneha.
When Matthew Arnold states, wandering between two worlds, one dead, the other powerless to be born, in stanzas from Grande Chartreuse, he aptly reveals the characteristics of the transition phase of the Victorian era. An era which has seen the sea of faith withdrawing its roar, laments the loss of the land which has once been beautiful and new. Keeping in mind the plea which Dover Beach proposes. Good morning and Jai Hind, everyone. I, the participant of team OD 2123, am here to propose my views in favor of the motion. Modern literature remarkably reverberates the Victorian literature. I truly believe that modern literature echoed the works of Victorian literature. Both the ages which seem to be breaking apart from tradition are similar. How is a question that must have crossed your minds by now. Well, allow me to tell you. With events like World War I and economic depression, the modern man felt a sense of disillusionment and alienation. But was it happening for the first time? No. Rather, such thoughts had already been developed and evolved in the creative world of Victorian writers, clearly seen in the works like Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, Oscar Wilde's Picture of Dorian Gray, or most popularly in the poems of Robert Browning. Browning paved the way for authors like James Joyce, Joseph Conrad, D.H. Lawrence, who would go on to create a psychological plane in their creative universe. When we read Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure, where he showed the cruelties of the divine authority and questioned this question again, Samuel Beckett wrote Waiting for Godot, or William Golding's Lord of the Flies, which enunciates Nietzsche's proclamation of the death of God. How can any one of us forget the role of George Eliot, Bronte sisters, whose works like Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Middlemarch, etc., gave voice to women who often remain unheard, and their turn in a room of one's finally gets fulfilled when world pen down far-setting works like To the Lighthouse, A Room of One's Own. I strongly believe that modernism is a tree that not only got its root from Victorian period, but also immersed it into itself. At the last, I would like you to ponder over the question. If the darkling plain, which has once been swept away with confused alarm of struggle and flight, is still befuddled or has been enlightened with works like The Wasteland, where T.S. Eliot seeks Shanti. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Code 21, would you like to take that?
Judges, please note that she took exactly 3 minutes.
Perfect, Sneha. That's perfect. Okay, code 21. I'm sorry, you did not get a chance to speak. The rest of you got multiple chances. We will let code 21.
I haven't had any chance of refutation till now.
Okay, we'll give both of you. We'll give code 21 and we will give code 1, both of you. We will begin with, we will give code 1 the first chance and then it will be followed by code 21.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
Excuse me,
code 21, go ahead. Code 1, go ahead. Please ask your question.
Right. So, ma'am, what I could not comprehend is how is Browning's romantic poetry a basis for whatever amount of poetry that happened in the modern era? And how do you connect that into a transition period? I just cannot comprehend how is Browning's romantic poetry a basis for...
Sure, I'll let you comprehend it. What I said, that Browning paved the way, and it meant that he wrote in the style of dramatic monologue, and James Joyce, Joseph Conrad, and D.H. Lawrence highly used dramatic monologue. Stream of consciousness is a very important term that we see in modern literature, and that was started when Robert Browning started giving their characters to talk about their inner feelings. That's how he paved the way for them.
Thank you. I'll let you take another question. Code 21, please go ahead. Ask another question.
Okay, I have this question that Victorian literature is usually regarded as a hypocrite because they always wish for longevity of the 19th century. But when we look at modern literature, they always talk about development and the future. So how do they even echo each other?
Go ahead, Sneha.
Yes, very good question. But I also like to send you that I spoke about 3 key points. That first, that the psychological world was explained. Third, that the godless world, these works were very much reverberated. And third, the feminism. So secondly, I also want to say that the modern literature and the Victorian literature was same in the sense that...
Let's wrap it up. Okay. 1 minute is about to be over. Very quickly wrap it up. I'll give you the last 10 seconds. Go ahead.
The Victorian literature also has criticism, which they were hypercritical, but they also criticize their works where people...
Thank you. Thank you. I just had one question to ask. Do we have any speaker, because there were 2 speakers who are not there today. Are they with us here or?
No, ma'am.
So
we are not there.
So we have covered all the speakers here today? We have.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, students, let me just clap very loudly for you. I do not care if it's an online or event, but I have loved your research. I have loved your fiery speeches. I have loved the spirit with which you have, taken on this entire debate, giving others a chance to. I have really tremendously enjoyed it. Kalamji always said to have an ordinary aim is a crime. So, hoping that you all targeted to be the best versions of yourselves. You put forward your best views. You were all very eloquent, very confident. Your research was thorough. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I saw the principal of Rajajipuram branch, the convener, Ma'am Nisha Pandey is here with us. And with
I would just request our honorable judge, Ma'am Dipali Mark, to please give her feedback and encourage.
Okay. May I just finish 2 lines close to context now, just to Rakshita, because I cannot see the principal and compliment her on the beauty, because there's a theme that reverberates throughout this Olympiad, the literary fest. We learn from, as I said, if we do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. So there's a connect that was established so beautifully in the World Parliament yesterday between the Victorian era and today, which even our CEO and our, that they all marked it, that it was so beautifully scripted. So I wish to say this to the principal and the convener of this program. I'm a literature student. So this is what I say to each of you speakers here. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. It never passes into nothingness. Loveliness increases. Truth is beauty and beauty is truth. That's all we know on earth. That's all we need to know. These are the lines from my favorite poet for your program, for Odyssey. Let's give it up for all the teachers and the principal. Excellent job. Cheers. Felicitations. And yes, Rakshita, now go ahead and call the, or Rachana, please call the judges to give their wine.
Good afternoon. I'll take it right from where you started by saying congratulations to the team that put this together. Beautifully, wonderfully done, considering all the constraints that are there technically, even though it's all about modern age technology. And you being from the literature side and me being from history, the fact that these two connected and they connected so well, the children researched really well, and the children, what a round of applause you should get for the fact that debate is about energy when you are going live and talking to an audience. So here you managed when you did not have a live audience in front of you. Beautifully done. And kudos to the school as well as to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your encouraging words. Having reached to conclusion, I just want to thank all the team leaders, participants, and spectators for their avid and ardent participation in this debate of Odyssey. Really, it was a euphoria to witness such a tremendous energy, fresh thoughts, die-hard approach, and immense dedication in the minds of young ones. You all are real winners. Here I quote Pierre de Coubertin. As he said, important thing in life is not winning, but participating. And you all have substantiated this universally accepted quote. I would like to thank our judges for listening, encouraging, for giving your time and being here. Thank you, Manju ma'am, for making this event so lively. Thank you, everyone. Over to Shalini ma'am.
The debate was extremely invigorating, and I'm sure each one of you enjoyed participating in it. Thank you for being a part of it and making it such a successful event. And as the Avvenimento, our second day of Odyssey 2021, draws to an end, I'd like to thank each person for being a part of this particular event. Thank you for making the day so successful. We're going to meet again tomorrow, same time, that's 10 o'clock in the morning. The link will go live at 9:30. The link will be shared with you people on your emails as it was done today. The agenda for tomorrow will be the nominations for submission events and followed by open mic session which will be live on the Zoom platform at 12 noon. At 1 o'clock, we will be live on the Zoom platform with Interaction Online. And at 2 o'clock, we will be live on the link with La Poésie that will be write, paint, and illustrate the poetry. The way the word will be unveiled for you people for the event La Poésie will be unveiled in the morning tomorrow. The same will be sent across to you over your mail IDs and also on the link which we will begin at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. So please take care till we meet again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you, students. I loved interacting with you. Now I can take your names, Divya and Ishan and Narayan and Sneha and Amar and Vanali and Shubhashri. I hope I pronounced your name right. I loved interacting with you guys. You were so good. You were really, really good. I enjoyed everyone, and I was so, because, 90 minutes we spent the other day. We have, and yeah, loved all of you. It was wonderful. You guys were really good, beyond my expectations. And that's what I just want you to ensure, that you are going to be the best versions of yourselves. Excellent, excellent. Well spent time with them. And all the very best to you for all your future endeavors. Loved you guys so much. I don't want to leave the platform and go, but I have to. Thank you for infusing the energy into me. I'm ready to jump, I wish I would allow you as many interjections, Vanali, I had so many questions for you and Divya too. And Amar, where are you? Ishan, I wanted to ask you so many questions, but as the moderator, I wasn't allowed, but I loved it. I loved your research was thorough, all of you. This is the way to prepare for a debating team. A child cries and language begins, but language is, it is the most powerful medium. You guys are excellent communicators and you will, go to the very top because you are the creme de la creme and you also have, besides you have that oratory skills with you. So, I expect each of you to do wonderfully well in life. All the very best. Stay in touch somehow. I love brilliant kids. I just love brilliant kids. And I just saw so many ignite minds here. Loved you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a great
Thank you
evening.
so much.
One chance
Thank
for
you so
everybody.
much.
Am I allowed to speak just one word to Madam Nautiyal?
Yes, please do. Maybe this is the one of the which I'm not brief.
Ma'am, I'm Smriti Khanna, Dean and Vice Principal, Sunbeam School, Mughal Sarai. And I have really loved your interaction with the kids, ma'am, and would definitely love to connect with you in future.
I'm sure Nisha will give you, Sunbeam I used to do the quizzes for GeoFest and History Olympiad. And your school used to, Sunbeam used to take all the trophies. So I still remember that. I'm sure our principal, the convener of the literary fest would be I'd be more than happy to connect with you guys. I love students. I just love students.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
United minds like these. Thank you so much. I'll carry that compliment with me. Thank you so much.
And thank you to the principal and the conveners. You all have been so good with all the communication part that you have not left any stone unturned to make our lives easy. Thanks a lot.
If I could just reach out and hug all of you, I would have done that. Ishan, I want to shake your hand so badly. Because that's when the energy transfusion takes place. I really, really wish that, the next Odyssey, Nisha, it has to be live and you have to call me to be with these kids, You have to just call me. Have a wonderful evening. I'm sure you have a lot to do. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manju, ma'am.
And
it was absolutely a huge matter of honor and pleasure for all of us. And I'm sure the participants agree with me that it was absolutely a very, very enriching session. Thank you for your precious time. And I could see that bond that you've developed with all the participants. That is so beautiful. And let's hope for all the best that next time we meet offline out here in Lucknow. So best wishes to you, ma'am, and to all the participants. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to hear each one of you.
Stay in touch.